How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, quick discussion here. It was requested from someone through an email that asked, Gangi, can you give some tips in dealing with inmates who expose themselves? This is a good episode, definitely something worthy of a discussion because I know our staff do deal with it. So me and Russ are going to give out some tips in regards to dealing with inmates who expose themselves to staff, who like to masturbate in front of staff. I think it's a very good dialogue. But before we get started, let me give you my sponsor. We have American Military University. If you guys get a chance, if you're looking to seek a degree, get higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk, also very supportive of what we do in correction. So please, guys, if you get a chance, please check out American Military University. Also, my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, is on the market. It's doing well, selling nationally, even internationally in some cases. If you get a chance, please check out that book. Link to that is in the description. And also, we have one more book, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. That book's filled with a ton of tips. That book's starting to make some traction. Again, guys, that book is also available on Amazon. Link to that is in the description. We also have our posters. You're overly involved with an inmate. If you're looking to get that poster, you have to email nassahs22@gmail.com. That is going to be the same email that we are now using for our online webinars. So right now, this one is available. It's a pre-record, and what you do is you email nassahs22@gmail.com, and you pay, I think it's $75, and then they will give you the link based on the time and date that is best for you. This training was 2 hours and 13 minutes. It's part one. Part two will be developed a little later on, but so far it's doing very well. Me and Sandy banged out a good first episode of our leadership training, which is based on position off of John Maxwell's books, which the main one including this one, 5 Levels of Leadership. So again, guys, you get a chance, please check it out. It's good training, $75. Worth it. If you have leadership that you want to train, if you're running an agency, you could have them sign up and I could send it to them based on their timing and their availability, so it works with everyone's schedule. Let me get Russ in. What's up, Russ?
Hey, there you are, Anthony. How are you doing tonight?
Good, brother. Hey, Russ, you mind introducing yourself again to our audience?
Of course. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I'm also a former senior juvenile correctional officer, and I currently work for a private company where we partner to do reentry and rehabilitation work with a local probation department and a local county jail where I am the case manager.
Hey, Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going?
Now, we're getting there. We're about ready to crack that 6,000 mark. I wish I had the name of the other one. I was invited today to admin one for correctional officers in North Carolina, trying to help that guy grow his a little bit. So all the way around, lots of growing, lots of good stuff out there for correctional officers across the country and across the world.
Now, guys, it's going to be a good topic. I thought me and Russ will be able to give out some good advice because we know this happens. But Russ, would you agree that this is a good topic today, dealing with inmates who expose themselves?
Well, Anthony, it's a needed topic, and the need that I tend to see more than any other when I start talking about this topic out there is there are some jails, there are some prison systems, departments, what have you, that for one reason or another, they are not focused on, actually enforcing the law and actually making sure that they keep their people safe. They treat this kind of thing as just, it's just, boys will be boys, or they don't give people the support they need in order to, try and press charges. In situations like this, more than anything else, I think they let it go. And one of the things that we can always afford to do in this profession is, instead of letting things go, we can come up with a comprehensive plan and make sure that we have a zero tolerance policy. This is no fun for any staff member that gets out there and experiences this. But sometimes, we forget that, we should be out there backing people up, to the maximum that we can in order to stop this kind of stupid stuff from happening, because this profession is hard enough without things like that going on.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, exposing can go both ways. You can have male inmates exposing the female staff, male inmates who expose to male staff, but you could also have female inmates who expose to male and female staff. Either way, when that occurs, staff needs to respond in a professional manner, but the key is also to document what has occurred. So I remember when I was in the academy, before I got into working at a female facility, a lot of the instructors would kind of joke around about going to a female facility and be careful, those females are going to flash you all day, and they would say these jokes. Now, granted, when I worked a female facility, I was never flashed once. I wasn't, and made me think, you know what, to be honest with you, and now that I, walking the walk and I had some experience, if they're flashing you all day, that's not the inmate now, that's you, because you're allowing it. That's the thing. I think when I was in the academy and they were telling you that, you're going to see this all day, as I've gained some experience, I'm thinking, yeah, if you're seeing that all day, it's because you're not doing enough to go ahead and deter that behavior, whether it's letting them know that you're not going to tolerate it, and then also following up with some documentation. But the key here, guys, is that exposure happens whether you are working at a female jail, whether you're working at a male jail, whether you male or female staff. Exposure does happen, but the key is, what are you doing to stop it? And the one thing technically that a lot of people may do is ignore it. And I disagree with that. Would you agree with that, Russ? Would you disagree with the people that just ignore it?
I would say this: if you are not actively deterring it, you are facilitating it. And that's the only way that I know to put that. Our reactions are part of, what allows them to get away with it. If we're going to laugh, or we're just going to, wave our hand, or just say, no, don't do that again, and it's never followed up by any proactive measures, such as documentation, it should always be reported in the way of, disciplinary and that kind of thing. Then we're not going to get the kind of compliance that we need. And a lot of these things lead to much more severe and severe issues if we don't nip them in the bud, so to speak. And the idea that, those staff members, and I'm speaking specifically here, yes, about female staff members, they just have to deal with it. No, they don't just have to deal with it. They need to be backed to the maximum possible in order to stop the action. Are you going to stop all of it? No. But if you're not stopping a lot of it, if you're not taking those proactive measures, you're creating a hostile work environment. And you know what? This is tough enough without having to, make people just kind of have to stand on their own and endure it. We should always be filing the disciplinary charges. We should always charges, if you will, if they'll be accepted in court. And if we have district attorneys or state attorney generals who are not amenable to firing those things, those people should be outed and put on blast with regards to this, and made to know that they need to step in and help law enforcement. That's what they're there for. And if they're not doing it, there is an issue. There is a problem.
Yeah, and guys, I just want to mention something. When it comes to exposing, and there used to be some in-house measures we would do. We can't do those anymore. I know female officers that have been exposed, and the male officers, they made sure that didn't happen again. So we can't be on this channel promoting that avenue, but we are going to give you some measures we believe could work. That could be some in-house measures that will help if the external measures don't work, like Russ just mentioned, like trying to get it over to the prosecutor's office to see if they're going to entertain it, which sadly enough, most of them may not, because, it's funny, if you're in the streets, it would be unacceptable, but I guess in the prison, some people think it is acceptable. And at that point, sorry guys, you know what you got yourself into. That's a bunch of bullshit. That's just lazy people not wanting to pick up the baton and run with it. Having said that, you have people that are exposing to you should be no different than what would happen if they were on the streets doing the same thing. I will mention this, though. When it comes to PREA, if you are the opposite sex or opposite gender, whatever you want to call it now, you do announce yourself going down the wing if you are the opposite sex. So let's say you have a male inmate that likes to expose themselves to female staff. And that's kind of where our dialogue is going to be focused today, not to minimize other exposures. We know that exists, but the request did come from a female officer. So with that said, when you're announcing yourself on the wing, which I think is ridiculous, but that's what has to happen now with PREA, is when you have an opposite gender, you go ahead and say female on unit, and then you go ahead and do your rounds, right? Now, granted, I think it's foolish because, one, you should always be professional, whether you're a female or you're a male. It doesn't matter. Like if I'm a male and I'm walking down the unit, I deserve the same amount of respect that's going to be given to the female, all because she announces herself. But either way, you have to take advantage of that moment. If PREA's got you announcing yourself down the unit by saying, I'm a female on this unit, I'm coming down, which sucks that you have to do it. But let's just say, for sake of argument, you have to do it. Granted, if they're doing something foolish at that point, let's say they expose themselves to you at that point and they try to lie, saying that, oh, they were indecent or whatever it was when you were coming down, don't forget to put down that you've announced yourself, because now they can't play that game. A lot of times when you go to write an inmate up for exposing themselves or masturbating, they'll try to say that they were taking a piss or, that they were getting dressed and all this other stuff. That PREA thing has been utilized to help us secure charges against that bullshit that they try to push by saying, hey, I announced myself going down the wing. You should have known I was coming down. And at this point here, you're being written up for indecent exposure. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Okay, yeah. So obviously, I'm not a big fan of PREA because it actually does the exact opposite of what the alleged intention is. And I say alleged intention because I have a lot of ideas about what the actual intention is. But if you're a female officer and you're going into a situation where you have to announce yourself as coming onto the course or the range or the unit or whatever you're going to call it, you may as well shout out, hey, you know what? If you guys are up there raping anybody, can you stop it now, please? This is ridiculous. My thoughts on what the policy should be, and I know they don't count for much, is that the only place that male inmates should be allowed to be naked is inside the shower where they have a modesty curtain, and that's it. Not out there, on the bunks, not anywhere else. If it's a cell situation, by the time you get to that first cell, they should know that you're there anyway. And so my view is that this is just a bunch of BS put out there by some people that are more fond of politics than they are about practicality.
Yeah, the announcement thing's a big bunch of BS, guys, because in the end, it just also makes you a target. As soon as you're telling the inmates that you're coming down, they could splash you. They could, do whatever they want at that point. And it just, as Russ said, if they're doing some illegal shit, now you're announcing yourself and it kind of gives them the heads up that you're coming. I've always said this. I said, you know what? If you want to follow PREA and PREA's telling us we have to make the announcement, I've done it where you get a female officer on the unit. So let's say, she's on the unit. She's working the unit today with a partner that's a male partner. You just announce for the whole day. Guys, be advised, there will be a female on the unit. Boom, done. You're not announcing each and every tour that person's going down. That is foolish. So again, that's if you're put in a situation where you have to do the announcements. Me and Russ said we are adamantly against those announcements. But unfortunately, with the PREA policy, it comes those announcements. So having said that, I know for the most part, when let's say the opposite gender starts the unit, they just tell the unit at that time, guys, I'm not announcing every tour I'm going on. Be advised, there's a male on the unit or there's a female on the unit. Now it's on you. Because I think the big thing is when PREA was written, guys, just to put it out there, it was really meant to, I think it's more so for the female inmates, to be honest with you. I even though it's supposed to be applied to both, if you look at a lot of the stuff that's happening with PREA, it really does affect the female inmate population. It does, especially when it comes to pat searches and cross-gender supervision. But having said that, going back to the exposures. So with that said, if you get an inmate that does expose himself or herself, well, let's just stay with the argument here. What we have here from the email is a male inmate with a female officer. What you could also do a little in-house is, obviously you're going to write the charge, whatever the charge is for the indecent exposure. But what you should also do is, this is what we could do in-house, things that we have more control of. You could put the inmate in for a risk assessment through mental health, and you could start noting the times that they're doing it, and then you start collecting on that. And then what happens is, when they think they go to get released, there could be another evaluation that could say, hey, this person could be a risk when they get released because they've gotten caught with 20-something exposures. So this person may think that they're going home and all this time it was fun and games, but no, there could be a request right now to see if we need to up your risk and then possibly civil commit you. Because at that point here, you've done nothing but expose yourself, and you could be seen as a sexual predator. A lot of people don't take advantage of that avenue in-house, where you work with mental health. And if you got an inmate that's constantly doing it, you document it and forward it over to mental health and have them keep on doing those risk assessments. And upon release, they look at it to see if that person's a risk. And hey, while this guy was behind the wall, he's exposed himself or got caught masturbating 20-something times. We may have to send this person in some level of treatment as a sexual aggressor before we go ahead and release them out to the public. What's your thoughts on that little in-house, Russ?
Yeah. There's things that we can do in-house that really is a little bit of thinking outside the box. I really like that one. There's some other things. Sometimes if we're having to deal with a situation like this, we can stop program. We might have to halt things up. We might have to go in there and remove something from this guy's cell. We might need to cuff him up. We might need to take him to medical in order to send him on a little trip to ADSEG for a little bit. In the midst of all that, that interrupts the flow of a lot of other people's program and stuff. And those things do bring pressure to bear on people to reform the behaviors that they're being involved in. I've always thought it would be great if every time one of us got assaulted, or one of us, was the victim of an exposure, so to say, like that we just went ahead and availed ourselves of what's available in the civil court process, sue them for whatever the minimum is in small claims court, $10,000, or sign yourself up as a victim of this individual and make sure that they have to pay you through their canteen account every month. And you know what? If they're not getting any money in there, then they're just having to, live like a pauper. I think there are a lot of things we could do to stress them to that point. The problem is getting enough people on the same page and making sure that we focus on this from a comprehensive viewpoint. There's a lot of things that should be in play. The number one that I would always call attention to, though, are those prosecutors who are failing to file those charges. And if you register yourself as a victim, if that's available in your state, those people can be brought to account. Because if we're going to be held accountable for what we do inside the prison system, they need to be held accountable for what they do from without.
Yeah, the sad thing is, obviously, we have immediate measures, we have long-term measures that you could do eventually to deter that behavior. But Russ is right. There are expectations, and the sad thing is, a lot of the times, the reason why people don't want to go the extra mile is because they feel that, let's say the prosecutor will be like, well, I'll be doing these type of cases all day. It's going to be tedious. It doesn't matter. Because, again, this would be something that wouldn't be accepted on the streets. We don't go ahead and accept it here. And to be honest with you, you should be more about reinforcing it when it's behind the prison wall, because that will help us maintain that behavior. Because, again, these people have already had concerns like that. So now that they're behind the wall, that's not a free-for-all. It's like, okay, well, let's show at that point that we have a further zero tolerance, that we're not just going to sit there and allow them to do this to our staff. Now, with that said, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. why should the needs and the expectations regarding school teacher who lives down the road be different from one of my female correctional officers who's out there on the line every day? Is there an expectation that female correctional officer should just accept her role as a victim? I would love to hear a district attorney say that and see if he could get away with actually say, well, I don't want to do that. There's an expectation. She signed up for the job. She should just expect that. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and you know what it is, Russ, when it comes down to it, it's the fact that either in their mind, it's too tedious because it's going to be ongoing, but it is what it is. I mean, yeah, we're going to
yeah, but is it? Yeah. See, the thing I would say to that is, it too tedious for the victim that has to endure that?
No. I agree. Like, I think here's what happens here is that they know, like, let's say a teacher, it's rare. So we're going to go after that 100%. But for our poor correctional officers, where it happens all the time, or our correctional staff where it happens all the time, you're right. Oh, that's just accepted in that behavior in that neighborhood. Bullshit. That's unfair. Yeah. It's unfair because at this point here, the reason why they're pushing it off is because it's work. Let's be honest. It's work and money. Let's be honest. That's what it is.
Yep.
I also want to mention the report writing. So we already know that when you catch an inmate doing that, exposing himself, and it's frequent, you have to know for a fact that they have these excuses that they're going to try to utilize to get out of the charge, and most of it's going to try to put it back on the officer. I hate the announcement bullshit, but sometimes they play that, which sometimes they just want to hear an officer will let it hold weight, like, oh, there was no announcement. This is the funny thing. There was no announcement that they were doing a tour. Whoa. Now you took it too far. Or she didn't announce she was coming down the wing. Again, she made the general announcement she was here all day. The sad thing is, because Priya put these standards of announcing the tour or announcing that you're on the wing, inmates have been able to utilize that to beat charges. I want people to know that right now. Inmates have been able to utilize that to beat charges by saying the officer never announced themselves, or in more general, the officer doesn't announce when they're doing their tours. And some weaker hearing officers have thrown it out based on that, which is bullshit. What you got to do is, as I said, when you're doing your rounds and you notice that the inmate's doing it when you go down, you have to be specific. You have to say, this is what I saw the inmate doing. And when they were doing it, they were looking right at me. They made no effort to cover themselves back up. That's key. That's key. Because one of the things is like, oh my God, I didn't know they were there, and I tried to cover myself up. Got ahead of that one, because that's not what you did. When I did my rounds, I quickly went down, saw what you're doing in your cell, and then you just kept on going. So at that point there, you write that down. You went by the cell, saw the inmate expose himself. You gave him multiple orders, and he refused to stop. You got to put that all in, because at the end of the day, when they go to argue their case, they're going to try to say that it was a surprise and that they quickly cover themselves up. I mean, you've heard that before, right, Russ?
Yeah, and the thing is that they'll say anything. They'll try anything. And so what you just have to do is you just have to write them into a corner. Go with what it is that they're going to try and say, or you can at least approximate that in your mind. And with that in mind, you destroy every single loophole possible there by being very explicit in what you saw, what you experienced, what his reactions were in each and every part of the scenario. And that's what we should be doing with every report that we write, not just the ones that involve exposures and things like that. But if you get my meaning, is we can anticipate what the justification or the excuse is going to be, and with that in mind, we can write a better report almost always.
Yeah, and be professional. Don't scream back, "Oh, is that all you got?" Or try to play that game where you're joking around about the size of their genitalia. All that. Stay professional. I've seen people do their rounds, give the inmate the direct order. The inmate still acts foolish, but they go back and they wind up writing their report very professional. They don't play a game. They don't crack joke with the inmate. They don't do any of that, because I've seen it badly where, oh, is that all you got? And all of a sudden another inmate goes, well, I got something bigger. Come by me. No, they got to know up the fact that your directive and your position, like basically, I'm telling you right now to cover yourself back up, blah, 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 and be the officer, be the professional staff member in your efforts to give out that order and expect that level of compliance. Do not joke with them. I know it's an embarrassing moment. It is. It's a tough moment to witness. I get it. But you got to hold your composure, hold your poise, and then go ahead and demand compliance in regards to what you need them to accomplish, which the first thing is to cover themselves up. And then what you do is you write your reports, but you do not, because I know a lot of people will sit there and like, oh, the inmate exposed himself. So what did you do? Oh, I told him I've seen bigger. Or I told him, oh, that's all you got. I just, that doesn't stop the behavior, guys. That makes it look like it's a joke. You know, if you were on the streets and someone did that to you, that wouldn't be your initial response. You know, so that's another thing too. I don't want to get it to a point where we've gotten used to that behavior, where we expect it. So we joke it off. We have to take it serious first in order for us to get other people to take it seriously. So again, if you're getting exposed and it's like, oh, well, they do this all the time and this is what I say and I kind of laugh it off. Yeah, well, we're already setting up the wrong mentality because like Russ said, if all of us got together and we took this as serious as it should be, then it would be us going in force to wherever it's got to go to that external side to push for charges. But Russ, what's your feeling with those that kind of joke it off?
Well, you know, that's just the part that we have to cut out. And the reason that people get that way is because, you know, we want to see an immediate reaction and result. Unfortunately, corrections is not cut out that way. We don't get an immediate result. We don't get an immediate action. We have to be in the game for the long game, for the long haul. So if we want to do that, you know, we have to start doing the things that make sense. We have to think outside the box a little bit. We need to, you know, forge new networks. You know, I would really like to see some female officers get in there and, you know, found some kind of, you know, female correctional officers against exposures or something like that, and start holding some of these really lousy district attorneys and state attorneys generals, hold their feet to the fire. Are you going to stand behind me? Are you going to file charges or what? And right now, even though I don't like necessarily a lot of things to do with the current political climate, there is a climate in place right now where you dare not, you know, try and enable someone who wants to victimize females. And we should be leveraging that to the maximum amount possible. And but there's some people that have to get out there and start taking the reins on this thing and start forming those alliances, those bonds, and those networks.
That would be a great movement to start from inside the wall out too, by the way, because you're right. It's happening on the outside and they're very empowering the women to speak up and do the right thing. So why are we not doing the same thing for the people that work behind that wall to create that level of respect so they don't get literally just exposed every time they're doing a round? So guys, this was just a quick dialogue. I mean, the basic premise is to remain professional, of course, document the concern, and then if they're not doing measures externally, keep find something. I mean, as I said, document it each and every time. You can send it over to mental health for a risk assessment. Management should be able to support that. But in the end, it's not a joke, because I will tell you one thing, man. People that do that and get a kick out of it have later on sexually assaulted people. You know, exhibitionists, voyeurism, you know, that could lead to sexual assault. Maybe the inmate exposes himself to you because he's behind that cell door. But now imagine if he wasn't. Imagine that was a dorm. You know, imagine where they can get their hands on you. I mean, it's a lot. And I know that's another thing, guys. When, you know, there are some facilities where, you know, the inmate's locked behind that cell door and, you know, maybe there's that barrier there. So when the inmate exposes themselves, you don't feel that's an immediate threat. So you kind of joke it off or you ignore it and you don't do the proper channels. You don't do what you're supposed to do. But now imagine just without that barrier there. Imagine if that same inmate now goes to expose you in a dorm or, you know, whatever it is. And you can see how dangerous that could be. Don't let that barrier, you know, minimize the fact that that person's a threat. You know, so I think that it's good that you document this behavior because it escalates. And as I said, maybe here's the funny thing. If this guy ever gets released and let's say they do something, they rape an individual on the streets, You know, and you're sitting here like, wow, that guy exposed himself to me 20 times, but I never documented it once. You know, that's our fault for not doing our due diligence. I think it is that within our due diligence to write those charges, because again, it's part of the safety that we provide. Because yeah, that person could get released one day, but hey, you did some great reports, and guess what you did? You just protected the public, because now that person was supposed to get released and they're not. Hey, Russ, any final thoughts?
Just on this, guys. When I was a sergeant, the viewpoint that I always tried to, push out there on my yard with regards to not just the exposure thing, but into, general disrespect of staff, but also maybe a little bit more specifically, disrespect of female officers. It just wasn't tolerated, right? And that wasn't anything to do with this necessarily the sexual component like we've been talking about tonight, but it's zero tolerance. And whatever extent we had to slow things down to go to a position where we could deal with this individual, and many times draw negative attention on the whole batch of who his running buddies and stuff were, that really, nipped a lot of that stuff in the bud. So if you take that mindset on, especially if you're a supervisor and you're not going to tolerate certain things out of the inmate population that doesn't immediately be met with a lot of negative consequences, you can really make a difference very quickly.
Yeah, guys, remember, guys, I mean, the key is as an officer or as a staff member, your job is to document. So again, even though let's say you get exposed, be professional in your response, document it. That's the number one key. If I could tell you anything, again, Russ, we talked about the immediate and the long term. The documentation is an immediate function, but it will serve in the long term. So for me, that's the number one piece of advice. Document, document, document. And then from there, you can decide where you want to go. It's not, do not ignore it, because the failure to ignore, there's nothing you can do later on down the line when stuff should be happening. Again, I hate it when people say, well, that type of inmate, he does that to me all the time. Well, then we need to do more to stop it. Because if that inmate's doing that to you all the time, then we got to get back at this table and say, how are we going to stop this? Because I don't want to hear any of my officers saying that I go down the wing and this inmate does that to me all the time. Because at that point, I take that as a failure. Somewhere along the line, we're failing at something. So whatever that case may be, let's readdress it. And let's take care of it again, because I don't want anybody to ever tell me that every time they go down the wing, this is what's happening. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.